Quiet on the set. And action.
Welcome to Media and Monuments Podcast, presented by Women in Film and Video in Washington, D.C. Media and Monuments is conversations featuring industry pros speaking on a wide range of topics of interest to media makers.
Welcome. I am your host, Tara Jabbari. A few months ago, I was able to speak with Sandi Harding, the manager of the last Blockbuster in the entire world, located in Bend, Oregon. We talked about the history of this store, the documentary called The Last Blockbuster, which is now on Netflix, and recalled memories and nostalgia that Blockbuster brings to people, including my own memories and personal love of the store. Please enjoy this one-on-one phone call that I was able to make with Miss Harding, and please excuse my fangirling throughout.
Hi, Tara.
Hi, Sandi. Thank you so much for speaking with me. I feel like I'm talking to someone super famous. So I feel like they're not going to answer back. It's Blockbuster. They're going to be so busy, but I'll try it. And the co-producers were like, yeah, that would be interesting because we just did the Avalon Theater, which is 100 years old next year. And they went into nonprofit sector to kind of survive because they've survived the Great Depression, 2 World Wars, all sorts of things. And then you have the streaming, war, if you will, or competition. And
then COVID.
And they had to reinvent themselves so much. And I was like, Blockbuster, there's one more left in the entire world. And for years, I've been wanting to go to Oregon. I literally want to just go see you guys in Bend and rent I Know What You Did Last Summer, and then just go outside and put it in the slot. Like the slot, it has to be, it's ceremonial for me. I was like, oh my God, so excited. Do you guys have I Know What You Did Last Summer?
We do. Of course we do. I think we might even still, I still know what you did last
I remember that movie.
I was like, one. But it's so funny. And Bend is a beautiful place, by the way. It's just absolutely gorgeous here. But yeah, our store still looks exactly the same. It looks the same as it did when we opened it, 30 years ago as a Pacific Video. And then we franchised to Blockbuster. Mm-hmm. And so we still have the popcorn ceilings. We still have the, Formica countertops and we have Papa Murphy's next door now. I don't know if you guys know what that is. It's like a Take a Big Pizza.
Okay.
And so every once in a while you'll come in and you'll smell the pizza from next door. And of course the nasty old popcorn smell that, all video stores have.
But it's a
Which
beautiful
I never understand because we don't really pop popcorn in the stores, but you still have that funky smell when you walk in sometimes. So anyway.
So when you started working in 2004, was it a Blockbuster?
Yeah, it was. So they opened in 1990. They opened the first Pacific Video. And then in 2000 is when they became Blockbuster. So it was 10 years later. And the whole reason behind that was because Blockbuster moved into Bend. And as we all know, Blockbuster was famous for, running out the mom and pops and closing down shop. But we had 3 very successful Pacific Video stores here in town. And we did really well with them. Or I should say they did because I wasn't here yet. And so Ken approached Blockbuster and was like, look, what can we do to kind of get you guys to go away and leave us alone? Because we do really well business. We either want to exist or have you guys not be here and run us out. And they said, well, franchise. And so that's what he did. So he franchised the 3 existing stores, or the 2 existing stores, I'm sorry. And the third one was like within a block of the new corporate Blockbuster store. And so we just closed that one and took over the corporate store that was there. And then we opened up another one in Redmond, which is about 15 minutes north of Bend. And then when I came in 2004 was when they opened up the 4th Blockbuster here at Bend. And I opened that location and then 6 months later moved here to this store in May of 2005. And I've been here at this location ever since. So, and at that point we had 5 existing stores and then we moved one of them to Madras, which is another probably about 40 minutes north of here because there was a Hollywood Video there and the Hollywood closed and the owner of the building reached out and said, hey, the Hollywood here was very successful. And it was one of the top performing Hollywoods that they had. And they were like, we got this store here. It's already got shelves and everything in it at the Blockbuster there. And so at the time, we were doing really well, but we had 4 stores in Bend. And so we were like, maybe we should just move one of these out there. And so that's what we did. We actually moved it and opened it within 2 days. Wow. It was incredibly chaotic and a lot of fun. But at that point, we'd already remodeled this location and done a few other things too. So we kind of had a little bit of an idea of how to do it. And I was really proud of the fact that we did it so quickly and opened that shop out there as a Blockbuster and had that store for several years. And ended up losing that store because that was when Blockbuster started to decline and we weren't really sure what was going to happen. And our lease was up and we couldn't sign another 5-year lease because at the time we were like, we don't really know what our future is going to hold, if we're going to be here another year, another 5 years. And so that's kind of how we lost that store.
What year was that?
Pretty sure it was the end of 2014. So I think Blockbuster had been struggling and we might have actually gone into bankruptcy already, or the corporate stores. And we ended up closing several stores like within a year. And it was just really crazy. So we lost the Matter store to a lease. And then we had a south location here in Bend that we had relocated. And then our lease was up and another big chain was coming into the center and they wanted part of our store for parking. And so we were like, well, no, we're not willing to do that. So they just waited out for our lease to be up and then said, well, we're going to turn part of your store into a parking lot. So we ended up closing that location. And that was crazy because we closed that location. And I know we talked about this in the documentary, but we closed that location and remodeled our East Side one. And because we had downsized, it was a huge store. We downsized it by half. We had taken the big sign off and we were taking the smaller sign from our soft location and moving it over there when Blockbuster announced that they were closing part of their corporate stores. And everybody thought we closed the store because we took the sign down. And it was like the craziest thing. I would see people in Costco or around town and they'd be like, oh, you closed your store. And I'm like, no, we didn't close it. We're just moving the sign. No. I saw in the news you're closing. I'm like, no, I promise you. I'd be the first to know if we close the store. It's not closed. It's just changing signs. But anyway, that was kind of our first realization as what it was going to look like as the corporate stores were all shutting down. And it was pretty ugly because I tell people all the time during that, I didn't want people to know where I worked because people would, say, people who didn't know that I was already the general manager at Blockbuster would be like, oh, how does it feel to be losing your job? Blockbuster sucks. They're all closing and they're horrible. And I'd be like, oh, geez. And I wouldn't want to have that conversation about how we were locally owned and everything. And at one point, we actually painted a thing on the front of the store that said locally owned here in Bend. Because our owners lived here in Bend and we're like, we're local. We're, we operate under the big name, but we're still, locally owned. But anyway, and to have it go full circle back now to where I'm not telling people where I work because otherwise people are like, oh my God, you're the last one. And then I'll never get my groceries. So,
so now you'll get fun. Like super fans like me and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm fired Sandi Harding.
Well, and the best part, like I love hearing people's stories because it makes me feel good and it reminds me why I do what I do every day. When people tell me, their wonderful stories about their family lives and going to Buster and how important it was to them. But my favorite thing of all is when a local comes up and wants to take a picture with me or tell me how good of a job our store is doing. Because then I realize that we're really representing Bend and our community. And then that makes me feel really good too. So,
well, that was one of my questions is, it's touched a little bit in the documentary, but for those who might not have seen it, because it's been a couple of years since the last Blockbuster documentary, what's the reason why people actually go to the store or in general, a store to get a physical copy? And then you have to come back to return it to avoid penalties. But it seems like a lot of work versus then just a click on your Roku or whatever you're using.
Yeah. And I think that 100%. The local support, it was just a matter of them not wanting to let us stop. Like they just kept supporting us and kept coming. And even during the pandemic, we were not, when the governor, shut down places here in Oregon, we were not one of the ones on the list that was mandatory shutdown. We tried to stay open. And suddenly realized there's no way we're going to be able to, because at that point, people were already traveling to see us, and people would come in and everybody would just kind of congregate under the same area. I'm like, okay, we can't really keep people safe. And at that time, I mean, we were all still wearing gloves and masks, and, we didn't realize that it wasn't from touching, it was more from the airborne issue. And so everybody really didn't know what to do. So we went ahead and shut down for a couple of weeks, and then we reopened very limited hours and did curbside service, which was something we had never done before. But we still had people coming in here trying to help us stay open. People were still calling me at home and, when are you going to be there? I'm going to come down to get some movies. And we have movie pass customers who have like a monthly subscription. And I called all of them and said, would you like me to suspend it until we know what's going on? So you're not still paying, a fee for something you can't use. And I did not have to shut one down. They were all like, nope, we're going to continue to support the store, even if we can't come in every day to rent a movie. So we definitely have that loyal fan base here that want to see us succeed. And not just because we're the last one, but because we've been a part of the community for 30 years. So they want to see us survive. But I think on the bigger thing, the nostalgia piece is a huge part of things for us now. There's no way we would have survived COVID on just those loyal people coming in. The t-shirt sales, the merchandise sales, and the online portion of our store now is what definitely allowed us to make it through the pandemic. And I think the pandemic, we had the fortune, there was a lot of small businesses that struggled. And so I want to make sure I give a shout out to all of them, because anyone who was able to survive it, I know how hard that was. And we had the nostalgia behind us, which helped us, and a lot of people did not. So I am not taking for granted that we had that special piece. But I think that during the pandemic, all of us that were forced to be at home, and suddenly you're like, okay, what do we do? We're all sitting here in the house, and yes, we can turn on Netflix. And then we started remembering what it used to be like when we actually sat around and communicated instead of being on our phones all the time. And people started to remember, when we got to go to Blockbuster, or when they, would go to a movie, or they would go do something as a family. And I think that kind of helped push that nostalgia piece up a little bit more, even because people remembered, what it was like and how much fun it was. And that's the thing I was alluding to earlier when I was talking about people's stories, is that, I've told this story several times, but it was right after we became the last one. And I was standing helping a customer, and I looked up and there was a gal standing next to me, and she had tears in her eyes. And at first I thought something was wrong. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you okay? And she's like, I'm all right. And then the customer I was helping was like, are you sure you're okay? And so I finished helping that customer, and I looked at her and I go, what can I do to help you? And she's like, I just have to tell you how important this is to me. Her dad had recently passed away, and her parents had been divorced. And over the weekends when she went spent with her dad, their thing was to go to Blockbuster, rent a movie, and that was their time they spent together. And so she came to visit our store, and it was just bringing back the memories of her dad and how special it was and how much it meant to her to be able to come to the store again after he had passed. And anyway, it was just very touching. And
I'm
there's
tearing
stories that I get all the time. And I think that those of us who maybe haven't had that kind of a tragedy still remember. My husband and I came to this very video store on one of our first dates. I remember coming to renting A Few Good Men and Forever Young with Mel Gibson. But I remember trying to rent those two movies and going to buy German chocolate cake because it was his favorite cake for his birthday right after we started dating. And that was our thing. We came here to the store. And so I even have a story about this location or about going to Blockbuster. And I think we all do. We all have that story, whether it was with our dad or with our significant other, or just, riding our bikes down Blockbuster with our friends or with a video game. Or, I've heard so many different stories that I think it just brings back, I don't know, just the good times. I don't know how else to say it.
Yeah, it's so nostalgic. Every weekend I was taking my bike and going to Blockbuster. My quick story is because I grew up in the suburbs of Chicago, and they knew me. They knew I was the 12-year-old girl who was obsessed with movies. And one time I go with my mother, I had a crush on Ben Affleck because Pearl Harbor had come out. And somebody told me to watch Dogma, the film with him, Kevin Smith's Dogma. And now looking back on it, I'm like, I think he was teasing me because it's such a weird movie. But I went to go rent it, and it was a new employee of Blockbuster. And he looked at me, this 12-year-old girl and her mother. And he's like, just so you know, this movie's rated R for bad language, and there's a poop monster in it or something like. And I gave him the dirtiest look. I'm like, do you know who I am? I keep this store running. I come every weekend. How dare you? In my face. And my mom's like, what? And he's like, do you still want me to rent? You want to rent this for your child? And she's like, I mean, did you already purchase it? Like, did we already rent? He's like, yeah. And she's like, well, we'll just go outside and return it. And I'm like, no. And so, but I tricked her into not letting me return it. And it's become one of my favorite films because of like, just despite the poop monster. And I've met Kevin Smith a couple of times and he's such a gem. Never met Ben Affleck, but I did relate to it from just the story of being religiously curious and all sorts, like what's the purpose of it? I loved it. But that's I was like, and then just for the record, I never saw that employee again. I think he was too nosy. So
that's funny.
But Blockbuster, I started tearing up when in the documentary, they give it to people who are being interviewed at VHS. And I'm like, I remember just playing with the case while we're watching the movie. It's the click, click, all that. And I just started tearing up, or like hearing the story you shared with the woman and her father. Definitely. It was a whole thing. And one of the reasons why it has to be I Know What You Did Last Summer is my cousins and I would always rent that whenever we visited each other. We'd go to the Blockbuster and rent that movie and get scared. And then it was the movie for years that we would always rent whenever we had a little reunion. And so it's just, it is the nostalgia. So I have a question. What's the furthest, like a person who's visited, how far did they come from visiting? Because I know in the documentary, somebody from Spain comes. And meanwhile, I'm like, it's a 7-hour flight from DC or something.
I think that we Googled it and Cape Town, South Africa,
Nice.
I think was the furthest. But we've had people from all over. We just last week, actually, it was 2 weeks ago now, we actually had someone come from Jerusalem who had their Blockbuster card in Hebrew.
Still.
And if you would, I should have thought about it. I should have taken a picture and I did not. But I was just so overwhelmed by the fact that he had his card. He was on vacation and he still lived in Israel. He still was over. And so he came over here and he was on vacation and came to our store and brought his card with him just so he could show us. And I thought that was so cool. But we've had people here from all over the world. I mean, Dubai, from Australia, everywhere.
I was looking at some recent articles and there was one from KTLA that came and you still said, quote, I think we have a couple more years left, end quote. And I was like, do you really think, are you always waiting for or anticipating that it will close?
Well, it's weirdest thing is that, I mean, I remember 2018 when we closed our Redmond location and we closed that in March. And this was before we found out Alaska was closing by a couple months. And I started like throwing things out and purging things that were out in that location, thinking, okay, we will be lucky if the Bang store lasts out throughout the year. And so we were kind of finally planning on it was going to be done. It was going to be done. And then Alaska closed. And that was almost 5 years ago. It'd be 5 years in July. So at this point, we've already had almost another 5 years beyond what I thought we were going to have. So I'm appreciative of every single year. Do I think we have another couple of years? Probably. I think that, every time I get a phone call like this one from you and I get a chance to talk about the store and maybe get a few more people listening to our story and going to buy a t-shirt online or coming to visit, it all just kind of helps extend out our period of time that we're going to be open. And so I'm super appreciative of the phone calls and thank you for having me on your show. But I do think that we have a couple more years. And my husband and I kind of laughed. I know I talked about the documentary that we had 6 years left. We're down to 3 years now, less than 3 years now.
Yeah.
And he's like, okay, so the plan was we were going to move over where our grandkids are in Idaho and be closer to our grandkids when we retired. He's like, I think we have a few more years before we have to do that. Or we get to do that. And I was like, yeah, I think we do too. And so it's kind of funny, but I'm willing to write it out as long as possible. So if it means a couple more years or another 5 years, I'm good with that.
Do you ever get a vacation? Because you deserve one.
I do. And I actually recently went to Hawaii with my husband and a couple of our boys, and we had a great time. And then I came back and rushed off to the Portland Expo last week, to the Retro Gaming Expo, and we recreated part of our store, which was a lot of fun. We'd never done anything like that. We never left the store and taken merchandise and, all of that kind of stuff. It was a very long weekend, but it was definitely fun. But yes, I do get vacations from time to time. So,
Well, I did want to ask, do you guys still have some of the film memorabilia that is mentioned, like the Russell Crowe costumes that were given to you from
yeah,
Alaska? Do
yeah,
you get more?
we do. We do still have those in there. And we have a lot of other things that people have donated to the store. People will send me a lot of personal things. People will send me their old Blockbuster cards or just random things that meant something to them that they want to share. I have ex-employees who will come up here and, bring me their old name tags or different things, which is really special. So we have a case with all that in there. And VHS tapes, you were asking about that earlier,
Yeah.
first mentioning that. We have people who donate VHS tapes to us all the time and old DVDs, and they'll find them in their attic or their garage or their basement, and they'll send them to us, which is wonderful because there's a lot of times we find, gems in there we don't have on our shelves and we can throw them out there. But anyway, it's a lot of fun because I have a copy of The Shining, which is my favorite horror movie in my office that I play quite often. I actually got a copy of Ewoks. I don't know. You are way too young to remember Ewoks, but, I remember watching it on the Disney, Sunday night movie on television and loved the Ewoks, which the, graphics are horrible, but it's still a wonderful show to watch. But anyway, we get all kinds of fun stuff.
What about Blu-rays?
Yep, we do still play Blu-ray.
Okay.
We do Blu-ray, DVD. I haven't dived into 4K just simply because, we don't have that big of an audience for it. And, we're the last one for a reason. I'm frugal and I want to make sure that we can make a profit on it before bringing it to the store.
So before we end, I wanted to ask, how can people help Blockbuster? And you mentioned that the local community has been so supportive. Is there any particular shout outs that you want to share to the audience? Because we are listened all over, not just DC.
I would love to just, again, thank everyone for the love and support because we do have our website, which a lot of people who can't come to the store. I've had people, send us old movies, or I had even a gal send me $5. She's like, if I was there, I'd rent a movie, but I can't be, so I'm going to send you $5. And I thought that was really sweet. It's actually framed in my office. But, we have $2 membership cards online and anything that anyone can do to help support it. If you want to buy something, go on our, bandblockbuster.com and buy something on there, or just continue to just send me those letters and just the good vibes, because that's kind of what's keeping us going.
And the address is on the website, so I can put that in the show notes if they want to send a physical letter
absolutely.
or the DVDs. Yep. I'll put that in there. Thank you so much, Sandi. I really hope I can see you in person and rent. I know what you did last summer. I still know what you did last summer. Maybe Dogma. I don't know. I'm so excited. This has been a highlight for me. Thank you so much.
You're very sweet.
And
thank you for reaching out. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Media and Monuments, a service of Women in Film and Video in Washington, D.C. Please remember to review, rate, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. For more information about WIF, please visit our website at WIF as in Frank, V as in Victor.org.
That's a wrap.